I believe you're well again today and that the Lord has continued to keep you and protect you. I want us to share a word today, and I want to read the book of Esther, chapter 6. I could have read many of those chapters, but because of time, let me just read chapter 6. The Bible says that that night the king could not sleep, so he ordered the book of the Chronicles, the record of his reign, to be brought in and read to him. It was found recorded there that Mordecai had exposed Bigatha and Teresh, two of the king's officials who guarded the doorway, who had conspired to assassinate King Xerxes. He asked what honor and recognition has Mordecai received for this. The king asked. Nothing has been done for him, his attendant asked. And my message for today is that the power of prayer. And so the only way we can reach our God and that we can communicate and let our requests be known to God is the way only through prayer. There's no other way. You can complain, you can have pity on yourself, you can murmur, and you can do all those things. But the only thing that God honors is prayer. The only thing that God answers is prayer. And why is it that it is prayer only? It is because prayer is a way that you show faith, and you have faith in your God. When you come to God and you are there, you are kneeling down, you are calling upon his name. Firstly, it means that you believe that he's there, you believe that he's able, and that you believe also that he can release an answer to your situation. And so that is why God is delighted every time we come to him, communicating to him through way of prayer. He is delighted. And so in the story I've just read, it is a story that you are familiar with. It is when Haman became an enemy to the Jews, and because Mordecai, he was a great man, and he refused to bow to him like everyone else was bowing, because Mordecai was one man that had his own integrity. He believed that he could not bow to a man. He only was supposed to bow to God and not to their gods or any other man for that matter. And so Haman was so angered by that matter, and he decided to assassinate him together with the other Jews, to destroy them. And that is how Haman heard of that story, and he gathered Queen Esther and all other Jews from all the provinces, and they came together to pray. And that is how they declared a 3-day prayer and fasting, and that is how Esther gained the favor before the king, because it was not, as custom was, it was not required for anyone to enter into the king's palace or to the king's chambers without the king having summoned them. And so because Esther was there, she had become queen, then Haman used her to pray and also to appear before the king and fight for the Jews, for them not to be destroyed. And that is now where we come across where we have read in chapter 6, where the Bible says that night, because of the prayer that the Jews and Esther and Mordecai were praying, that is when the king could not sleep that night, and he began to check on the books that were written. And the Bible says that he came across that story where it was written that Mordecai had discovered that Teresh and Bigatha had tried to assassinate King Xerxes. And that is when now God began fighting for these people because of the prayer they were making. It was not ordinary that the king, with all the comfort, with all the peace, with all the nice beddings and the nice whatever that he was having, could not sleep that night. It was not on an ordinary occurrence. It was only because there were people who refused to stay an ordinary life, or to really live an ordinary life and just allow situation to be. But they came together, and the Bible tells us they prayed and fasted for 3 days, and that is when God intervened in their situation because it was a crucial moment, and Haman had decided to destroy all of them. And so I want to let you know that every time you come before God and their situation has been facing you for some time, and all you can see is as destruction or failure, I can tell you, you can overturn any verdict of the enemy concerning your life by coming to God and by allowing yourself to petition whatever it is that you require from the Lord through way of prayer, just as these Jews and Mordecai and Esther did. And the Bible says that night, God could not allow the king to sleep because he wanted justice for the Jews. And I want to let you know that also God can cause situations that are just flowing ordinarily not to flow as they are supposed to be, because he wants to answer you. He wants to do something new in your life. He wants your answers to come to be. And that is when now we saw that they prayed, and Haman, instead of Mordecai to be hanged on the pole that he had erected outside his house, the Bible tells us that he was taken there and he was hanged himself. And that is after he took Mordecai round the streets, declaring that this is the man whom the king has decided to honor, has been pleased to honor. And because at that time, when he came to the chambers, he thought that it was him that the enemy, that the king, had decided to honor, because he knew that there was no one else that was very close to the king but him. And so he was too full of himself, because every time someone is full of themselves, they are not discerning of the moments, and so they are always thinking about themselves. They are always thinking of how they're gonna receive everything they deserve, and they do not know that things can turn around for their disadvantage. And that is how we are supposed to be very discerning, very prayerful, so that we may know when seasons are favoring us and when seasons are not favoring us, and arise to the occasion by way of prayer, so that the enemy may not find any chances of coming to attack our lives. And so because it was time for God to honor Esther, Mordecai, and the Jews, he allowed Haman to come and declare what that person is supposed to be done to, and he gave his best. He said, let the horse and that the king has ridden on, and a purple robe which the king has worn be put on that person, and let that person be taken to the streets, and the one that is taking him round declare that this is the man the king delights to honor. And that is how, and the king said, just do that very fastly to Mordecai the gate man. And because it was an order from the king, there was nothing he could do. As he was preparing to go destroy Mordecai that night, it was a surprise to him that now he was taking a Mordecai round the street, declaring that this is the man that the king delights to honor. And so you can turn any situation to your favor through way of prayer. There is no mountain that cannot bow before prayer. There is no situation that is too big before prayer. There is no enemy that is too big when you begin praying. There is nothing that can oppose a praying righteous man. A prayer of a righteous man, the Bible says, it availeth much. And so when you pray, when you come to God and pour out your heart and sanctify yourself and allow God to fight for you, God fights for you in the best way possible. And so we saw this in the case of the Jews, and in the case of Haman and Mordecai, the situation just turned around for the good of the Jews and for the good of Mordecai, and he was lifted and he was given a position in the kingdom of the king, while his enemy Haman was taken to the pole which he had erected himself to hang Mordecai. He was annihilated in the same pole. And that is how that is how much powerful prayer is when you begin to pray. And one thing I want to tell you there is that do not give up prayer. It does not mean God cannot delay in answering, but God can answer when he begins to answer. Because I believe Haman Mordecai was still praying, and Esther was still praying before. But because it was time for God to remember the Jews in all the provinces, because it was time for God to honor his people, there was there came out an occurrence that could now make God's power and the prayer of the Jews to come out and to be answered publicly. Because when God begins to answer you, he never you pray secretly, but when he begins to answer you, he answers you for everyone to see. And so I have come to encourage you that it does not matter what it is that is fighting you right now. It does not matter what situations you've been facing and what battles you've been fighting, no matter how difficult that situation is and no matter how fierce your battle is. I want to tell you and I want to encourage you, just as God caused the king not to sleep because it was time for Haman to be destroyed and for Mordecai to be honored, your king will not sleep until you receive the answers to your prayer. And so I have come to encourage you this day that continue praying, because God answers prayer. God does not neglect the prayer of the righteous. God does not let go the prayer of those that are seeking him day and night, those that are trusting him with all their strength, mind, and heart. He is able to answer you even now. Begin just to continue praying, and do not let discouragement take any part of your heart, because it is a weapon that the enemy uses, telling you that you've been praying too long and God has not been answering. I want to tell you, when it is time for God to answer, he answers you. That is what happened to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego also. They refused to bow to the golden image which the king had put forth because they believed in their God. I believe in your God so much that you refuse to bow to anything, to any pressure, to any force that is coming against you, because I know that there are forces that can come to you causing you to feel like you want to compromise. But when you stand still, the Bible says you shall see the deliverance of the Lord. And so Haman was destroyed, and Mordecai was lifted and was taken to another level. He was just a gate man, but it did not matter, because God only looks at the heart. He looks at a heart that is clean and righteous before him. A prayer prayed by a righteous man, it availeth so much. It destroys powers of darkness so much. It pushes the kingdom of darkness to where it is supposed to be. And so when you pray, do not begin to look down at yourself. God will answer your prayer. God will favor you when it is time for your favor. And I believe this is the year where God is going to restore to the church. And I believe that God is going to answer to us and give us the desires that we've been asking him to give us for many years, because it is God who declares seasons, and he has declared that this season around, in this year, it shall be a year of restoration to them that have been trusting upon him. Have you lost something? Have you been praying for something? Today, God is telling us that he refuses that anyone that has been sitting on your position, that has been destroying you in secret, he refuses that they go on doing that, because the time for you to be honored, the time for you to be lifted, the time for you to come out of every bondage and every slavery has come. It is your time to take that seat, while the one that has been taking your seat, your Haman, shall be destroyed as you get lifted up. The Jews, it is time for you to rejoice, because God has come to answer you in a great way. And so, do you know Jesus? Do you know his power? Do you know that he can answer prayer? Do you know that he is your Messiah and your Redeemer? Do you know, are you aware that he's the King of Kings? And whenever he says yes, no one can say no. You remember when Jesus asked his disciple, who do people say that I am? Some say that they answered saying, some say you are one of the prophets, some say you are Elijah, some say that you are, and they gave their answers. But Peter got it right. He said, you are the Christ, the Christ the Messiah, the Christ the deliverer, the Christ who has come to save the world. And that is who Jesus is to us today. He is your healer. He is your lifter. He is your deliverer. He is your king. He is the one that fights your battles. He is the one that has come to elevate you and to take you to another level. And so I have come to tell you, power has the